the director for Bruno Manser Fund, to give us some words about his work and what they're doing.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Mutang, for the introduction. You all have probably heard of Bruno Manser, the Lucky Tawang, the man who disappeared in 2000. And Bruno lived 6 years in, mostly in Limbang, Mago area with the Penang nomadic communities at the time. He was often in Long Seridan, but of course also Long Lapir, Chant, many places. So 4 years after his disappearance, the organization Bruno Manser Fund, it's an association that he founded in 1991, they were looking for a new director. So it was a job advertisement put out in a newspaper in Switzerland. So I applied for the job. I did not know Bruno, I did not know anything about Sarawak. I just had just completed my PhD in history, in environmental history, and I needed a job. I had 2 small children. And then I came to see them, and the office was very interesting. It was full of newspaper clips and snake skin, and there was a jar with poison dart, with a big skull, don't touch. And then Bruno's secretary, John, he was a heavy smoker, so the whole ceiling was very black everywhere. And I said, I cannot work like this, impossible, I'm not going to do this. So then we started discussing, and I told them. They wanted to know who I am, and so I said, yeah, this all sounds very interesting, but I cannot work like this, impossible. And you need to do things in a different way. So this is what they wanted to hear, and they said, okay, Lucas, we want to keep you. I said, okay, I give myself 1 year, then let's see, because of course they have no money either. So, and then I started in June 2004. And first meeting when I met Kobeok from Penang Association Keroan, and I met Mutang, and they were presenting Bruno's Rainforest Diary, a very impressive book with many drawings where he tells the story, how he went and what his experience were. And I found, yeah, quite interesting. So, and at the time the mapping had already started, because Mutang heard in Canada about the successes of the First Nations with mapping their traditional lands. And then he said, okay, we have the same legal system or similar British-based legal system, so we should try to adopt this. And then they started a mapping project, and at the time I took over, it was very complicated. I didn't understand it. So, because some of the work was done in Canada, some work was done with Primas at the time. And then in November 2004, I first met Harrison at Primas office at the time. And Penan from Long Lamai and others were already doing mapping. And so then we decided, yes, we want to really also become a training center for mapping and involve in this. And of course, this government law about the mapping being illegal, we had heard about it, but we thought, okay, now we are outside Sarawak, so we just do whatever we want. We try to do this. And so the first few years, mapping became very important. It was a big project. And also from the mapping, then of course, not only mapping the land, but also claiming the land. So we tried to assist the communities who had filed NCR cases in court. Harrison had filed for them, Barubian had filed for them, and later on Chihau in Kuching. We tried to also help with the documentation. For instance, I could also meet some former British colonial officers, Ian Urquhart. I was when he was still alive in Croydon, near London. I also met Rodney Needham, the first researcher, anthropologist who published his PhD on the Penang in the 1950s. And so more and more we got into this subject, and I also was lucky I could expand my team. and soon we had then professional mappers like Simon, some of you know him maybe, and we were also able to publish a map series with 35 maps of Penang community lands in 2015, I think that was. And we also won the prize of the Swiss Cartography Association for this map series, because more than 5,000 rivers were first time on a map with a native name, or with a name at all, because official government maps, it was just all white and no river names. And I think 1,700 mountain ridges and localities. So that was very important, and later on we tried to bring these maps in also as evidence in the court cases. But of course, you know, the laws are made by people for whom the laws are made. So they are not being made for the native communities. So most of these cases, it was very hard to succeed. So one important case that we worked on with Mutarang and Komyok, and also with Harrison, was the Limbang case with the late Peter Raja as plaintiff, with John Urud as plaintiff. And that was a landmark case because for the first time we could bring together different native communities. So it was between Flavit, Lumbawang and Penang, all together, one case. And I remember when we were discussing this first, the question was, oh, our land claims are all overlapping. Shouldn't we first discuss who owns what land? And I said, no. First, the case needs to be one, and then later on, it is still time to discuss, because all this land, I mean, a lot of conflict can also arise from these issues. But then, of course, later that case was unfortunately, it went to the Supreme Court, and but it took years. But unfortunately, as you know, the land has not been given back. After this long mapping, I mean, we did really a lot of mapping. So the mapping for us, this is a project, but we also run campaigns, and we also do documentation. And mapping is in a way between project and documentation, because these maps, once they're ready, you can still show them in 100 years, because we still have the old maps from the 19th century, so it's something extremely lasting, and that's why it is so important to document the culture while the people who know the history are still around. They still know the story, so they still know the language. Everything is still here, but we don't know, is it still here in 20 years, in 50 years, or in 100 years. And I also personally went through a process that in the beginning I thought it's all about the forest, because I'm also a conservationist, I'm a naturalist, I'm a nature lover, I like bird watching and botany and insects as well. I'm interested in all these things since I was a child. But then later on I found out it's not only about the forest, it's not only about the land rights, but it's all about money. Because a lot of money is being made from land, from logging, and basically every truck of logs that leaves the forest, when you see the truck passing, you see these big logs. But you think, actually you should think, these trucks are not carrying logs, they are carrying bags of money. So the money is leaving the forest, and it's not coming back. It's going somewhere, and someone is benefiting it, but not the communities, because the communities mostly are still poor and have little access to the benefits made from their lands. So, and of course at the time it was still the type being a chief minister and then later on governor. So we started in 2010, we started this Stop Timber Corruption campaign, because we said, okay, now all of this, a lot of the economy of this state is just controlled by one family. I mean, Taib Mahmoud, he came into power in 1981 as chief minister, and he made so much money that he himself said, I have more money than I can ever spend. And we know that he has political protection, also protection from the law within Malaysia. So our strategy was to say, okay, now we follow the money, because this money is not staying in Malaysia, it's going to other places. So we tried to follow the money and then started researching and found out that the family have properties worth several $100 million in Canada, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Australia. So we went to these different places, and then we tried. At the time, it was after the Arab Spring in 2011. So it was a time when autocrats were being held accountable internationally, and also Switzerland, where I come from, we have many big banks, and some assets were frozen, like from former Egyptian President Mubarak or Syrian Assad. I mean, some of these rulers, they had money. In Switzerland, it was frozen. And then we once had a discussion, and I remember Mutang, you were there too, with the foreign ministry in Switzerland, and they said, oh, everything that is about the forest, the nature, we cannot do anything, because there is sovereignty over natural resources by the states. But if it's about human rights, or if it's about money laundering, then maybe we can assist, we can do something. So we tried to file court cases, our first police reports in different countries, and I wrote a book which was called Money Logging, which is 10 years ago actually was published. And in 2017 we filed a court case in Canada because we wanted the Canadian authorities really to investigate what was going on. And unfortunately, and Harrison was there as well when we filed it. It was very cold at the time. I mean, Komiok was there as well. And Bilong, the Penang headman from Morgan Society, said, Mutang, Canada is very beautiful, but I pity you for the cold. And we did not, I mean, we lost the case. It was not disclosed. But still, since we have learned that because of our campaign, the Canadian police, they sent a team of investigators to KL to talk to MACC. But MACC sort of turned them down. We don't know it exactly because we don't have full access to the files, but MACC knew this was going on, and of course there was political protection for time.
It was Najib at the time.
It was Najib at the time, so the question is who is the big crook? One of them is dead, one of them is in jail. So, but then actually, so that was in 2017, and it was about Tarek's daughter Jamila time. And then she decided to hit back at us. So in 2018, they filed a court case against BMF and against myself personally. And they try to do what they always do. They come in with a lot of intimidation, with a lot of, I mean, they tried to, against me personally, they alleged 8 crimes. So not only about offending them and this kind of defamation, but they also said I had misappropriated money, so from BMF and so on. But all of this was invented, so none of that was true. And that criminal case against me stopped 2 years ago, but the civil case is ongoing. And we have been fighting back. We said, okay, now you take this to court, we take up the challenge, and we bring in all the evidence. So we filed 600 documents, just showing all, starting with CMS. When they took over CMS, the largest public company in Sarawak, into their family. And from CMS, the logging interest, the shipping interest to Japan, to ship the timber to Japan, then all the hotels in Adelaide, and all these places. So we filed all these documents. And there was a trial last year in August, and we've been waiting for the verdict for more than 1 year. So the verdict is still pending. So it's going to come out within the next few months, probably. And we didn't want to just, okay, they sue us, they can do that. And if you are being sued as an individual, you have to give up immediately, because it's so expensive, and you can't stand this. But if you're sued as an institution or as a network, it's much harder. And they underestimated us, and of course for us it was also, we said, okay, now this is also an encouragement to be more precise and to do more research. So we're waiting for that, and we thought, okay, now because they are not calling any witnesses, so let's call the witnesses ourselves. So last year, in August, we organized what we call the Rainforest Tribunal, and basically telling the story of Sarawak. First in the morning, what happened in the forest over the last 30 years with international experts, professionals, and then with community representatives on how the communities were intimidated and threatened. And then in the afternoon we talked about the money, about the corruption. And then we also tried to talk about what is the future going to be. Because to me personally it's always important also to empower and to say, we're not only seeing the bad things, we want the good things to happen, but if we want these good things to happen, we need to develop some ideas. And it's best if we develop them ourselves, as a network, as a community, as a group. And this can also be very inspiring, because sometimes only fighting against evil can mobilize many forces, but sometimes it's also, I think it's very important not to lose sight of the good things that you want to achieve. So that was where we stood last year, and now another project we became involved in was the Upper Barham forest area. Actually, because 18 Penang communities, when we once visited Longapir, I think when I was first time in Longapir with Komiok, that was in maybe 2010 or even earlier, 2008. And we also said, okay, now what could it be a positive vision for Barham? Instead of only staging blockades, and also for the communities to develop something. So we started talking about the Penang Peace Park as just to have an idea. Okay, we need a label. We have to give the child a name, and then it became the Barham Peace Park, because we said, okay, it's not only for Penang but for everyone together, all the communities. And then we wanted to officialize this, and at the time Paul Chai was with the forestry, and Sarina Shebley, so the social forestry department of forestry was very active. And then this Upper Barham Forest Area project was developed, and then it was submitted to the International Tropical Timber Organization, ITTO, as a project. And it was approved by the Malaysian government, and then it was submitted, and no one wanted to pay for it. So then we decided as BMF we want to come in with some funding, because it's really important for this project to go ahead. And we've been involved for that 2 years, and we have had the second project steering committee today, and we were told by the forest department they want to terminate the project, because the demand, they can't stand the demand for transparency. We asked them to make public now the logging concessions. For instance, 2 concessions by Sam Ling held in Upper Barham, numbers 411, 412 in Suling Selaan. They expired end of last year, and they were given out to a new company called Borneo Land Timber, which is here by a local tycoon He King Chok, who seems to be close to the government now. And there was no open tender. It's just an application made, and no one knew these concessions were going to expire. So the communities could not apply for a concession. Maybe the communities would have wanted to have the concession right themselves. And this kind of, I think this is a clear case of corruption to me from outside, because there was no tender. I'm sure money was being paid, but how much and to whom? And apparently this call for transparency was too much. So, and they talk all the time about sustainability, about free prior informed consent, and so on. But if they are serious, the first thing they need to do is they need to publish who holds the concessions, and they need to make this information available. When does the concession expire? What is the plan? What are the reserved forest areas, and so on? This is just something I experienced today, and for us, we are from outside. I keep saying, this is not my struggle, it's your struggle. I do this as a job. We are professionals, and by the way, this is my colleague Sophie. in the back, Sophie Schwer, she is working with youth projects, with women empowerment projects, and she has also brought in tree nurseries in cooperation with a professional outfit, let's say. And the tree nurseries are quite successful because the banana communities who still have access to primary forest, they still have the old trees, like Belian trees with seeds, and they have become extremely rare. And so it was Sophie's idea and also contacts to bring in these community